Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
This is the Daily Memphian Politics Podcast. I'm Bill Dries. Our main event is IT, Data and Technology in Local Government. Top of the podcast, the state turns over inventory and distribution of vaccine to the city of Memphis after an investigation of problems at the Shelby County Health Department turned up more than unused vaccine that was wasted. The state's probe found a lack of basic record keeping to tell how much vaccine was on hand locally and also stockpiling for teachers, although Shelby County schools officials say they weren't told about the stockpiling. Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland emphasizing this past week that the county is still involved in the vaccine effort, giving the shots along with others. Congressman David Kustoff, particularly critical of Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris, although not by name, referring to the county administration instead for what Kustoff termed a fiasco. And Kustoff says the state should investigate further and possibly expand this to the feds, calling the problems, quote, gross negligence and possible malfeasance. The state health director's report and decision on all of this February 23rd had the impact here in Memphis of a bombshell. In the reaction, county commissioners calling for an immediate briefing from Shelby County Health Department Director Elisa Haushalter, so a closed-door meeting called that same evening for about 90 minutes, couched as an attorney-client session, which is exempt from the state's open meetings law. Except it wasn't strictly and legally speaking because Haushalter was there. So as we record, a public special meeting of the county commission called to essentially do the same thing with the public there, which also appears to cure the violation. The boil water advisory in most of Shelby County lasted a week, during which low water pressure problems emerged near the end of a series of 3 ice and snowstorms and a week of below freezing temperatures in Memphis. The problems included water wells well past their prime, aging water pumping stations, and electronic controls in need of replacement. All items on Memphis Light, Gas, and Water's list of capital repairs, fixes, and upgrades as part of an overall $1 billion infrastructure upgrade for all 3 divisions, electric, gas, and water, over 5 years. That plan, financed in parts, rate hikes, bonds, and savings, put into action last year after the City Council approved the electric rate hikes. The first major vote of the new council elected in 2020 followed the multi-year water and gas rate hikes approved as the old council ended its 4-year term. But the capital upgrades had been a goal not only of current MLG&W President and CEO J.T. Young, it was also a goal of his predecessor, Jerry Collins, and that was rejected by the council earlier. Some on the council wondering aloud this past week if the water system might have been better equipped to endure the extreme and prolonged weather event if the improvements had been able to get underway a couple of years ago. The water upgrades were just getting started when the winter came to town in a big way. A new wrinkle in the Tennessee legislature on a familiar topic, the Tennessee Attorney General. Usually the legislative proposal involves the popular election of the Attorney General, who is currently appointed by the Tennessee Supreme Court. Well, a bill this session would require the Tennessee Supreme Court to vote in open court on its selection, and it would require approval of whoever they pick by the legislature. If the legislature doesn't agree, the state's highest court picks again. This, by the way, is Sam Stockard's story in the Tennessee Lookout. One of the arguments is that it crosses a big red line in the separation of powers between the legislative and judicial branches. It's a different consideration than electing the Attorney General, which has its own complexities. If that were to happen, the Attorney General's office would be the fourth statewide elected position, along with governor and the 2 U.S. Senate seats. Politically, the argument is that Tennessee does not have a very deep bench of tested candidates of either party without the longer slate of statewide positions that other states have on their ballots. The other side is a good part of the state's legal establishment argues an attorney general appointed by the Tennessee Supreme Court, which is unique even from states where the governor makes the appointment, keeps what is basically state government's attorney from becoming a wholesale part of the political process. That came up in the discussion in the Capitol this past week, with some Republicans countering that if the office is now mostly untouched by politics, why did it take 140 years for a Republican attorney to hold the job? This would take a change of the Tennessee Constitution, so the legislature would be voting on whether to put this to voters statewide in 2022. And if that happens, the proposal would have to get a majority of those who vote in the general election for governor that year. A related move underway in the legislature, there is an attempt to oust Davidson County Chancellor Ellen Hobbs Lyle by some in the House and the Senate, each with a Republican supermajority. And the basis for the ouster movement is her rulings last year, especially in the case of the use of absentee ballots in Tennessee. The Tennessee Journal reporting that the Biden administration has given notice that it might withdraw several federal waivers of Medicaid rules granted in the last days of the Trump administration. One of those waivers allowing Governor Bill Lee's TennCare block grant program to get started. Now, this appears to be aimed at Medicaid work requirements in several other states, but it could apply to the block grant waiver for Tennessee's version of Medicaid. Bobby White, the Shelby County Elections Administrator for 28 years, 1974 to her retirement in 2002, died this past week. White was the administrative day-to-day force and foundation at the Shelby County Election Commission during a different era in the business of running elections. The front person in those years was Election Commission Chairman O.C. Pleasant, but White was who those running campaigns and running in the races also paid attention to behind the scenes. She knew the campaign side of politics as well as the mechanics of running an election. Her tenure at the Election Commission began when lever machines were still being used and moved from there to Shooptronic machines and early voting to the dawn of countywide primaries and touchscreen machines. Runoffs to no runoffs or at-large seats, the Shelby County Quarterly Court to the Shelby County Commission and a county mayor. The J.C.'s helping with the vote count to the election night in her first year as administrator that 3 Ford brothers, John, Emmett, and Harold Sr., won seats in the state Senate, state House, and U.S. House, respectively. And then to Willie Harrington's 142-vote upset over Dick Hackett in the Memphis mayor's race on a very late and tumultuous election night in the fall of 1991. She was a stable and respected presence in what can be a very volatile business because when all the votes are counted, there are always more losers than there are winners. Joining us now is Sandra Perry, Shelby County Government's new Chief Information Officer, leading the technology and data side of a local government in what is a challenging undertaking, appointed to this position by County Mayor Lee Harris in February after serving as the interim Chief Information Officer. She has worked in county government IT for more than 2 decades, serving as an administrator before taking the interim position, and now the appointment, which has been confirmed by the Shelby County Commission. Ms. Perry, give me an idea of the scope of county government IT. It's hard to imagine a government transaction that wouldn't or shouldn't involve information technology in some way.
Good afternoon, Bill. Thank you for that question. Absolutely. The scope from a CIO lens and perspective is very broad. It's having that strategic, visionary aspect, but you also have to blend it with that tactical, being ready to jump in there, roll up your sleeves, and be hands-on. So in support of Shelby County, which is a very diverse and unique organization, we are supporting upwards of 50-plus organizations, each one of them with very unique needs in order for their operations to continue. So we have to blend that always into our technology stack as we, look and plan and create the vision for our ITS division. So that's one of the major things that I think is so exciting for me, taking on this role in a permanent position.
Mm-hmm. From what I've seen in city and county government, the position of Chief Information Officer, which sometimes has different titles for the same job, and that title has kind of evolved itself. But whatever you want to call it, this can be a hot seat position. What are the things that keep someone in your line of work up at night?
I think it's always being able to anticipate the needs because they can be so broad and they can be very fluid and changing. So you're always wanting to anticipate and being able to help them create the technology that they need. Because for us, it's about a blend of the people and then the processes that they have in place, and then being able to augment that and complement that with a technology solution. So for me, it's always being able to provide them that quality of technology and that service that's going to give them efficiency, cost savings, and being available and being able to, be successful in their operations day to day.
Mm-hmm. Right. And how is government IT different than the private sector?
That is absolutely a good question, because in the private sector, you basically have more autonomy. You basically start with a budget, and then you're able to create that strategy and that vision and that strategic plan. With public sector, it's all about being able to be a partner, creating relationships, being able to broker technology and show them the value add in creating and implementing certain technology tools that will help them and showing the value to their particular business. And that's one of the things that is really, I see, as broad and different. You're always brokering, being a partner, and building relationships in order for you to move forward in your business.
Right. And you certainly know what I'm about to say, but for those who may be new to the podcast or new to some of the detail that we go into on the podcast, Shelby County government has the administration, and then it has a group of countywide elected officials outside the administration who are autonomous to a degree. And in the past, and I believe currently, that's included some having their own separate information technology systems. Is that the case now? And is there a move to get all of the county's IT administration and outside the administration in one system?
Right. We do that, and we look at that from an enterprise perspective. Yes, different agencies have the option in which to continue to provide their own internal IT solutions. But we have what is called our IT steering committee. And it's the overarching representation of all of Shelby County government. And all of us come to the table and we look at the enterprise use of technology. There are going to be, as I spoke earlier, some unique needs that are very specific to that business. But we look at that overall standardization and see where we can partner and consolidate, which brings about the cost effectiveness and the increased efficiency that we look for in Shelby County government, keeping up with the pace of changes in technology. So through that IT steering committee, that gives us the road to basically bring that consolidation together.
Mm-hmm. And I know that there have been some spirited discussions at times over the years about that, about where an elected official might say, look, I was elected by the people. I took an oath of office that's independent from this. So I'm not sure about becoming part of one system because I have to have a system that's more secure, let's say, or I have to have a system where I keep track of it and I have to balance privacy concerns with public concerns with the transactions that are made. I take it that's still part of the discussion or the dynamic of
Yes.
that committee.
Yes, Bill, absolutely. That is a great focus on that because it is the voice and the representation of exactly what you're speaking of. So that's the forum in which those conversations are taking place and can take place so that everyone can understand the multiple levels and what's unique about the different divisions and what is needed that's unique for their organization from a technology standpoint. So we have to be very much engaged on a collaborative level as a group body, but we also go out and we engage individually to understand what are their unique needs and how can we provide the security that's needed for that or the tool. Sometimes we find that tool off the shelf. Sometimes we have to in-house create that tool. So we have to do the broad, which is the enterprise, but we also have to go down in detail to look at the uniqueness of each business and understand what their technology needs are by understanding what their business is.
Mm-hmm. Is it realistic then to expect that county government will ever get to the point where all of the functions of the different parts of county government, inside and outside the administration, will be part of one information system?
That would be very hopeful, and it would definitely be a great business model. Long term, absolutely. And that's as we continue to collaborate and understand, like I said earlier, the unique needs of each of the organizations and look where we can create that enterprise consolidation. But that's a long term because that's a real lofty goal. I think you have to approach that in small chunks. And we've taken on the look through the lens of the IT steering committee to be able to say where currently exists those opportunities. And from that, we hope to extend and expand and build on those. So me being very hopeful in this new role and being excited about it, that would be awesome long-term vision for Shelby County government as well as IT in Shelby County government. But yeah, I think the approach to that has to always be the consideration of the uniqueness of each of the different divisions. So the conversations today have not been launched at that level, but I think the thinking and the concept definitely is a doable.
Mm-hmm. Let's get a little further into the weeds here. How do you balance privacy and credit card transactions and other ways with what are public records all in the same office?
We've actually created different, I'll call them, we'll just say we have different areas. We have what we look at as our most secure. That's where our credit card and our consumer transactions that has to protect their compliances and requirements for like PCI, HIPAA. We have that as our most secure tier of our network structure. Then we have that area where the requirements of all the compliance and regulations are not so much, which we call that our middle tier. And then for those areas that the nature of your business has no security or regulatory compliance functions and requirements, we let that be our lowest level of security. But yet security, like I say, it's a wraparound in everything we do. We've just segmented it and implemented certain tiers as the most secure areas, which the level of authentication and security is in a greater depth. And then we kind of taper it down based on the needs and the roles and the responsibilities. Mm-hmm. We always want the business to be able to be continuous, and we have to make it where it's secure, but then we can still perform operations and needs for the government.
Right. And what I'm picking up on in your comments is that there are the systems and the plans, and then there is the technology that interacts or interfaces with the systems and the plans. So with that in mind, do you buy or lease this technology? Because we all know the technology changes, advances, and makes older systems obsolete. And licensing agreements run out and have to be renewed, or they can't be renewed because the company's not servicing that equipment anymore.
Yes, this is absolutely correct. So we do that in a blended fashion where it makes business sense to bring it in-house and we maintain it, and then where we also engage with our third-party vendors because that's what they do all day, everywhere. So that gives them the unique position to have the subject matter expertise that's needed. So we will partner with them and we will outsource where it makes business sense. So we do a blend of both of those in order to bring the best industry practices within Shelby County. Yes.
Mm-hmm. On top of all of these complex matters that we've been discussing, we now have some county offices that have the ability for employees there to work from home during this pandemic. How has the technology you control held up in the work from home reality for about the last year now?
And so far, we've had actually really good results because we had to hit the ground running. We had to make a major pivot from day-to-day operations. COVID, the whole pandemic, was something that was very new for us. We had DR, business continuity plans, but we had to take a pivot with it. So we were able to secure the platforms for, remote work and audiovisual and virtual meeting spaces as we're having now. And we were able to look at what security needs were, what the business needs were, and we were able to partner with people in the local community, which was a really plus for us to create all of this technology transformation that we had to do in a very short period of time. And it's worked very well. It has definitely been a plus for us. We're able to manage and monitor and make changes on the fly as needed. So far, it actually, I think, has been a good pivot. And I think we've been successful at it.
Mm-hmm. And you said this is working with a lot of local contractors.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. We were able to reach out and partner with several of our locally owned businesses, which was very good for our economy, because that was one of the strategies that I stressed with our team. Let's look at how we can do this locally first and build from there. And it actually was a great success story for us. We were able to basically help the community and then help ourselves with the technology that we needed. So there is a lot of technology right here in the city of Memphis that is very much in demand and can meet the technology needs.
Did you encounter some version of the digital divide that we saw surface most visibly with students doing virtual classes? Was there a version of this for county employees?
Not so much. Ours was basically minimal because a lot of our employees had the technology already in their home environments. So we only needed to put the partnership together for them, whether they could make the connectivity to our network. So we just had to open up, but we also had to keep an eye on the security because there was a great risk. We had to make sure that we had the security in place so that if someone was doing what we call bring your own device, which is very new for us, then we needed to make sure that we did health checks and we monitored to make sure that they were not creating possible compromise for our overall network. So that was kind of the biggest area where we had to grow and build from. And then being able to provide those who did not have the remote tools, we had to secure those and create, their opportunities there. So I think those were the two biggest challenges for us. And I think that went across most businesses and industries. But yeah, those were our biggest challenges. And we were actually able to, like I say, successfully locally complete those. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. I'm proud of that accomplishment for us.
Mm-hmm. It is some of this change going to stick around after we are past the pandemic, whenever that is?
I think yes, because we have seen Shelby County government has been really a traditional government from an IT perspective. You know, we're in person, we're there for our citizens to come and transact their government business. We've now seen where we are successful in allowing people to do that using technology. So that in-person engagement, we've given them a different and new option. So I think that's going to be here for the long term, because that allows people to come whenever they want to. They now have always on access to Shelby County government, so to speak. So I think that's a big plus, and I think that's definitely going to be here to stay.
Right. A final general point then. What is the biggest challenge currently for county information technology and for government IT in general?
I think if I had to personally say, the public sector, county government as a whole has always been kind of always seen as always trying to catch up with the private sector because they're able to do more and do it faster. And I think for us, being able to turn that perception around using and accelerating the pace of change for technology, because sometimes government is kind of always viewed as in a maintenance mode. So being able to accelerate the rapid change in the pace of technology and where it's going, I think that's going to be the greatest challenge for us, to be able to always be a part of that and keep up with that pace as it's changing.
Mm-hmm. And that also, in addition to working on that, you also have to work for where people are, the customers, the public who uses county services and interfaces with the system. You also have to work on that because it is an adjustment for the customers as well.
Absolutely. As I stated earlier, it's not just about being a creator or provider of all things technical, but you have to be that change agent. You have to make sure you get that adoption. And that adoption is not just within Shelby County government, because we are here to provide the service that extends to the citizens. So that adoption has to be able to extend out to the public as well. It's got to be there, and it's got to be for them to be able to use and benefit from it as well.
All right. We have been talking with Shelby County Government's Chief Information Officer, Sandra Perry. This week on WKNO's Behind the Headlines, Greater Memphis Chamber President Beverly Robertson and Ted Townsend, the Chamber's Chief of Economic Development and Government Relations, both on economic growth in and after the pandemic and the latest wave of a long-running civic discussion about economic development incentives. You can hear the podcast of that show on our website now. Subscribe to the Daily Memphian at dailymemphian.com. You can subscribe to this podcast and our others at Google Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. I'm Bill Dries. The Daily Memphian Politics Podcast is produced by Natalie Van Gundy.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.